Hello, Internet. Taliesin here, and welcome to a new year and a new you and the same old me and brand new data mined, very spoilery cinematics to talk about. And if you're undecided as to whether it's too spoilery for you or whether you could probably risk it, then let me inform you, it plays as part of the Torghast campaign with the Twisting Corridors, and Wowhead, who are obviously the miners who dated this data mine, are calling it Sylvanas' Choice. So, you know, yeah. And usually I wouldn't talk about data mine cinematics in a video like this, and I certainly wouldn't do a full-blown cinematic analysis on them, especially when everyone is still waiting for the video analysing all the Shadowlands leveling cinematics. But you know what? This is our first video back from our Christmas break, and this is my Christmas and New Year and birthday combined present to myself, because I want to talk about it in all its beautiful, spoilery, speculation-fueling gorgeousness. So I'm going to. And if you've never seen one of these videos before, then welcome. But also, bear in mind, this is not a reaction video. I've watched this cinematic loads of times already when I really should have been doing other things like washing or doing taxes or feeding my baby. And if you haven't seen it already, then this video will be a really bad way of watching this cinematic, because we're going to be stopping and starting and skipping bits and talking all over it and just generally having a proper old geek out, chatting about the teeniest details. And in fact, we're not even going to start with the cinematic in question, because Sylvanas' Choice is really the third in, so far, a trilogy of cutscenes based in Torghast and featuring these characters. And to be able to discuss it properly, we're going to have to take it in the context of those other cinematics, which maybe explains the running length of this video. So join us as we discuss the Sylvanas, Anduin and the Jailer trilogy, or Three Colors Sylvanas, or Sylvanas Reloaded, or the Sylvanas Identity, or Lord of the Sylvanas. I can't think of any more trilogies. As we ask, what is the Jailer's plan for Anduin? What is the Jailer's plan for Sylvanas? What is the Jailer's plan at all? How on board is Sylvanas? And is this the start of her redemption arc? Okay, go, 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 go.
All that matters is we now possess the necessary instrument. We must begin its preparation.
So the first of the cutscenes that we need to look at in the build-up to all of this is mercifully short and appears in-game as the players are trying to rescue Thrall from Torghast, although to be honest, he looks like he's having plenty fun, but whatever. As we're running around squishing more rats, we suddenly happen upon the Jailer and Sylvanas walking along having a chat, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh wow, here are the two big baddies of the expansion right in front of us, right now, and this is in Torghast, so right now I am full of anima powers, giving me crazy abilities that allow me to do outrageous amounts of damage, or turn baddies into chairs or tables, or hex them for hours until they die. And oh shit, this entire layer just got nerfed last week. Basically, there will never be a better time to take these guys on toe to toe than right now. We could end all this today, just as soon as I've eaten a quick portion of Stygian stew. But for whatever reason, our character decides that they're not up to a climactic boss fight right now, and instead does an expert Black Ops hiding job to eavesdrop into their conversation, which is very interesting indeed and sets the scene for the next two cinematics proper.
Leave him to me. You've seen what he is capable of when he believes in the cause. A measure of patience may yield superior results.
And who are they talking about here? These two? Well, spoiler, it's Anduin. He's the only one of the Peacebringers that we haven't rescued from Torghast by the end of this run, and the Jailer refers to him as the instrument, with Sylvanas showing a real commitment to taking this task on herself. You've seen what he's capable of when he believes in the cause, she says. And of course, the Jailer absolutely has in the opening scenario when Anduin used his big golden bubble to fend off the Jailer's whole army while we made our escape. Similar to what he does in the BFA cinematic trailer, but this time he does it without even crying or anything, which shows major progress, or is a real shame depending on your point of view regarding the beautiful angel-faced crying boy who is weirdly even more beautiful when he cries. What's interesting though is that Sylvanas, for all she has spent the last expansion mocking and goading Anduin, calling him the little lion, leading him into collapsing castle traps, clearly really wants him on her side and seems genuinely invested in turning him. So invested that she fails to notice my character basically sitting on her lap right here. And I know you're thinking, wow, Taliesin, I thought you mained priest, but this is clearly a rogue you're showing us right here with those amazing stealth skills. And yeah, what can I say? Sometimes I surprise myself. To the jailer, Anduin is an instrument, a weapon, a tool to be used, and it clearly does seem to be Sylvanas that has convinced the big boss man that Anduin is the right tool for the job, despite how they've spent last expansion desperately trying to wipe each other out. Sylvanas obviously holds a level of respect for Anduin, or at least his power, enough that she thinks the surely on the face of it futile effort of turning Azeroth's most bleeding heart Boy Scout goody two-shoes is worth it. I said we wouldn't dwell on this one, but I just want to point out, it's been said a lot this expansion already that these in-game cutscenes have come on leaps and bounds recently, and it's true, they look amazing, the camera and character movements are much more dynamic, the lip syncing is great, but one of the most important aspects of what makes these scenes so good now is that there's clearly been a lot more effort put into sound design. Footsteps, armor clunking, just general atmospheric effects are one of those things that you wouldn't necessarily even notice when they are done well, like here, but is one of the reasons that these cutscenes in earlier expansions felt so weird and unnatural when that level of sound design wasn't in place. Which brings us to the first proper pre-rendered cinematic cutscene of our trilogy. Again, originally data mined by Wowhead, as it sits unlisted on World of Warcraft's official YouTube channel and shows us Sylvanas' first attempt to mold Anduin into that weapon that she has promised her boss. This establishing shot of Torghast gives us an eyeful of spiky, fiery goodness that as players of this expansion we are all too familiar with at the moment, and showing the sparse, empty vastness of this area serves to highlight how small, helpless and vulnerable the figure of Anduin is when the camera pans down to reveal him. And it's just a little thing and it's probably unintentional, but of course in our experience Torghast is something that we spend all of our time travelling up. So to see it from above and the camera travelling down into it is, for us, a new perspective and suggests that this action is taking place at some unreachable toppermost part of the tower that we could never get to. And as the sounds of Sylvanas arriving through a massive sounding door we hear unlocked, opened and then locked shut again off camera, we focus on Anduin, eyes closed, bracing himself or trying to phase out his surroundings. We know from other characters that we've rescued from Torghast that whatever happens to them in this tower, it is enough to leave them shell-shocked and empty, choosing to sit quietly in the corners of Oribos in their own world rather than even go back to Azeroth. Like, seriously guys, there's portals to Stormwind and Orgrimmar just around the corner. Seriously, just go and take some me time. So we know that whatever his captors have been putting Anduin through since we last saw him, it's no joke. And as the King of Stormwind hunches over, literally on his knees in chains, there's a grimace as the cell door bolts shut because he knows his torment is about to begin once again.
I do hope you've settled in. The accommodations are a bit sparse, I know.
And that sheer size of the jailer's domain is a constant theme here. Sylvanas, the larger-than-life antagonist in BFA, is dwarfed by her surroundings as she makes her entrance in her cool, spiky Covenant armor, showing us that what's happening now is far bigger than just her. No matter how at home she feels here, striding down the steps as confidently as she walked up the path to Icecrown at the very start of the expansion, and framing our view of Anduin with her legs, which I'm pretty sure isn't supposed to be a Graduate reference, even though I totally read it as a Graduate reference, but instead to emphasize his submissive position in this exchange, and opening with the kind of sass that we saw her use on the throne in Lordaeron. But Gen Greymane has clearly rubbed off on our lad Anduin here, because he is such a very good boy that his first thought, even in the face of more horrific torture, is to worry about his friends. He's such a dweeb, but I like him.
Where are the others? Are they safe?
Safe? No. I wouldn't say any of them are safe.
I am so tired of your games.
And the delicious pleasure that Sylvanas takes from having all the power and control here is an absolute delight. I really like shameless baddie Sylvanas. It absolutely suits her. And her facial animations in this and the next cinematic are some of the best that I think Blizz have ever managed in these cinematics too. When Anduin says,
I am so tired of your games.
I think that's something we can all relate to. I think I speak for most of us when I say I am so ready for Sylvanas just to be totally upfront about what she is doing and what she wants now. No more mystery regarding what she's trying to do. No more 5D chess. I just want everything out in the open so we can get on with enjoying the conflict. And when she casually waves away Anduin's chains and promises,
As you wish. No more secrets. No more lies.
that sounds like it could be as much a promise to the player as to Anduin, who would really just like to know what's been going on for the last 3 expansions, you know? And, well, she doesn't quite lay everything out in the open, but there are certainly some very illuminating parts of this conversation.
You are a weapon we will use to achieve our ends.
I will not become an instrument of death.
And the next exchange between the two is really lovely.
So you favor life, is that it? That momentary flicker. Every cruel second spent delaying the inevitable in an endless war that you, like every Rin before you, will not survive.
Well, Sylvanas very eloquently dismantles the idea of life being even slightly important or worthy of alignment in the grand scheme of things. A momentary flicker in comparison to the eternity that follows it, poking at memories of Anduin's parents, both of whom he has lost to violence, and making a pretty good case for the fact that both life and death are very unfair.
You know the truth. Nothing is fair. Not life, not death.
Which it's kind of hard to argue with. And when she says,
So we're going to tear it all down.
this is probably the closest we see to her convincing this paragon of goodness that actually she might be onto something, appealing to Anduin's sense of justice and fairness, and it does find a kink in his armor, because he moves physically towards her, not aggressively, but genuinely inquisitively, asking her to explain what she just said. Somewhere deep down, he wants to know.
And what purpose would that serve? Everyone suffers, Sylvanas. But destroying everything will not take away the pain.
Oh, you misunderstand.
Which is when, of course, he hits the edge of his prison. Sylvanas' display of releasing him from his chains was just that. A display, a show, a hollow gesture. A lie. Right after promising no more secrets, no more lies, showing Anduin and us that no, despite how sensible she might sound here, she is still not to be trusted. It's worth noting here too, on the subject of distrust, that in another cinematic that we're going to look at in a different video, at the end of the leveling campaign, Sire Denathrius also reveals to us what he thinks the jailer's grand plan is. And sorry, but he and Sylvanas appear to have very different ideas about what their overall super objective is here. Daddy Nathrius saying the aim is to make death the supreme ruling power of them all with absolute domination. Sylvanas insisting that they want to dismantle the machinery of life and death and rebuild it into something fairer.
We're breaking a system that has always been flawed and remaking it into one that is just.
Do you expect me to believe that all this time, you've been fighting for justice?
Someone is lying, whether the jailer is telling each of his allies what they want to hear to get them on side, which feels pretty believable, to be honest, or whether Sylvanas is lying to Anduin about her desire to create a fairer existence, because she knows that justice and compassion is his weak spot. Something which also seems very believable, and which we should be very willing to believe, given her show of releasing him but not really just moments ago. But Sylvanas doesn't shift from her position, and whatever the truth of the jailer's plans, in this moment, Sylvanas certainly seems to believe in it, genuinely, which is kind of awesome in a way. Clearly, Windrunner is guilty of unforgivable crimes in life, but it's so refreshing to see her with an apparently genuine and heartfelt cause behind it all, which, okay, might not justify her actions, but would certainly explain them. And, you know, it's difficult not to sympathize with wanting to dismantle unfair systems and create fairer ones in their place. You sense Anduin feels that too. His objection to this argument isn't that he lacks sympathy for the sentiment, but that he simply doesn't believe that Sylvanas actually cares about justice at all. And you know, he might be wise to be wary. But then again, the next big speech from Sylvanas does appear to be from the heart.
From our first breath to our last, every decision is made for us. Then, the afterlife decides what eternity we must endure. We can't even choose who we...
There certainly seems to be very personal and emotional attachment to the words that she's saying here, because all of the injustices that she's describing aren't so much universal, but very specific to her. Every important decision was made for her in her life, from her job to her death at the hands of Arthas, to her undeath at the will of Arthas, to her place in the afterlife at the apparent mercy of the jailer, if the short story describing her glimpse into the Shadowlands in The Edge of Night is to be believed, to the most revealing of all, when she has to cut herself off from the final sentence, which was clearly going to be, we can't even choose who we love. And it was clearly about Nathanos, and I really like that. Either that, or it was going to be, we can't even choose who we join for our covenant because of the damn meta. And either way, we all feel her pain, I think. But the point is, it feels genuine, as does her belief in the jailer and his ability and intention to make things better.
We couldn't control anything, but through the jailer, control of our fate will at last be possible.
And the worry here is not that she's lying to try and sway Anduin to her side, it's that she's not, and that she actually does think the jailer has the answers. Because if that turns out not to be the case, and the fact that he's clearly told Denathrius and Sylvanas different things as to what his answers and intentions are, then it could be Sylvanas that has been played all along, and that far from playing 5D chess this whole time, it was her getting played, and that it was her understandable bitterness and resentment at the extreme injustice of her own life and death that made her able to be played. And you know, I think Anduin hits the nail on the head when he says,
Look around you! At what and who you've joined. What makes you believe you're not just a weapon to achieve his ends?
And I think that line is probably in there specifically to plant that idea in our heads as the viewer, just in case we hadn't thought of it ourselves. Either way, despite Sylvanas' confident exit from the scene,
You have a choice to consider. Join us willingly, or be made to serve.
I thought you believed in free will, Sylvanas.
We've never had free will, little lion. But that is about to change.
if the aim of all this was to convince Anduin to join her side in this fight, then you'd have to say it hasn't really been a success, to be honest. As after one brief wobble at the beginning, Anduin seems as fixed as ever, and Sylvanas' declaration that free will is coming for everyone rings a little bit hollow when she says it to a guy who she has just kidnapped and put in chains in a massive infinite prison, and who she has just said join us or be forced to serve. Maybe the next cinematic can enlighten us a bit more, which would be good, since looking at the third installment in this Three Colors Sylvanas trilogy is the whole point of this video. Let's get started on what Wowhead calls Sylvanas' choice.
Sire Denathrius has been taken prisoner. What is our plan to recover him?
Every soul has its purpose. Denathrius has fulfilled his.
I love this cinematic. I think it's wonderful and there is so much to talk about. So, in the first part of the trilogy, we saw Sylvanas convincing the jailer to let her work on Anduin and try and win him over. In the second part, we saw her try and largely fail to do that, as well as leave him and us with a lingering feeling that perhaps it's Sylvanas who is being manipulated the most in all of this. And then part 3 opens with the rhythmic thud of hammer on steel as the jailer himself oversees one of his minions. It's a Flameforge Enforcer. They're the ones that do that annoying fan of flames thing in the Soul Forges. This is the Soul Forges, just saying in case you were wondering. Who is busy at work. While Sylvanas has been busy with her pet project of trying to turn the golden-hearted Boy Scout Boy King, the jailer's plan has been progressing anyway, without her. Another reminder that Sylvanas is not the most important piece on this board. And the relative unimportance and expendability of the jailer's allies is further emphasized by the conversation that happens to open this scene. Sylvanas asks him what the plan is for Denathrius, and the jailer says, basically, him. And when he says that Denathrius has served his purpose, does that mean that he was meant to keep us occupied while the jailer got on with this far more important business? I wonder. And I wonder if this ruthlessness towards his other wingman, who had been loyal to the jailer for far longer than Sylvanas has, who risked everything to help him, surprises Sylvanas at all. We don't really get to see her reaction either way, and it's Sylvanas, she probably doesn't give a shit. Or maybe she is a bit taken aback by the jailer's lack of compassion to his old buddy, and maybe this is her own Banner Bay side-eye moment, where she realises something important about her boss and his true nature.
We must forge our next weapon.
He's not ready.
Then a more direct approach is necessary.
And look, I'll be honest, I have no idea what the jailer is doing here, so if I've missed something very obvious that explains it, please tell me in the comments below, with my apologies. But the jailer creates a Doctor Strange-style rune portal through which he yoinks a glowing anima shard. Now, is he reaching into the sword that Denathrius is imprisoned in somehow to take his soul? Is he grasping power from the mysterious gaps in between the realms of the Shadowlands, where those massive devourer things come from? Is this portal thing like his own personal Longboy and he just bought the shard he needed from the auction house? We may never know. But as the gem is passed to his blacksmith, he informs Sylvanas that the time has come to make Anduin his weapon, and he doesn't give a solitary shit that Sylvanas doesn't think the boy is ready. Turning him willingly was always something he allowed Sylvanas to try, but at the end of the day, it isn't actually necessary, and this decision is way above her pay grade.
We have not come this far, only to falter now. You know what must be done.
And as we see glimpses of the weapon being forged, which, with everything we know about the origins of Frostmourne and the Helm of Domination from the earlier Runecarver's dream cutscene, it can't help but make us think of those instruments of the Lich King. A new mourneblade is being forged here, but when the jailer says we must forge our next weapon, he's not talking about the actual weapon that he's forging right here. He's talking about Anduin, and he's going to use the weapon that he's forging, which isn't the weapon he's talking about forging, to forge Anduin into his next weapon. Who is the weapon that he's talking about forging, not the weapon that he's actually literally forging right here. We have not come this far only to falter now.
There she is again. You know, these endless lectures of yours
Have failed to convince you.
And as we make our return to Anduin's cell, there are some important differences from the last cinematic. It's the same space, but it seems smaller somehow, more enclosed, helped by the way the camera is placed at floor level rather than soaring above like last time, setting up the coming exchange as being more personal between these two old adversaries than the matter-of-fact conversation between Sylvanas and her boss in his office just now. And obviously Anduin, now free of his chains, is not desperately trying to block out his surroundings or flinching when he hears the door open. He's standing back to where he knows Sylvanas will enter from, quietly taking in the sights and sounds of Torghast in studied contemplation. Put simply, the status and balance of power in this dynamic has changed since last time, possibly because of the insight Anduin gained into Sylvanas' situation. I say he doesn't flinch when Sylvanas enters, he literally rolls his eyes and sighs, and then sarcastically greets her. Anduin is putting out some proper sass here, and I am all for it. It's the same tone that we are used to Sylvanas taking with him, and I think there's even a chance that Anduin is looking forward to a bit of sparky interplay between them here. A bit of a verbal duel, which isn't totally flirty, but is also maybe kind of a tiny bit flirty, you know? But Sylvanas really isn't here for games this time, and cuts him off, being as cold and matter-of-fact as her boss man just was with her.
Regardless, the conversation is over. One way or another, we will have you. So I will offer this one last time. Join our cause, or be made to serve.
Her pet project has been put on ice and the jailer has pulled rank. It is time for Anduin to join the team. Sylvanas is so determined to get Anduin on side willingly with one last attempt that she knows must be useless, but which does again come across as genuine and imploring, like it's not a game or a trick, but a real emotional appeal, which Anduin is confused by too, until...
What kind of choice is that? Why even give me?
In his mind, the penny drops.
It's the choice you never had. Despite all your grand designs, there's still some shred of your mortality haunting you. As if the Banshee Queen hasn't entirely eclipsed the Ranger General.
Don't.
And Anduin thinks he knows why, at last, Sylvanas is so intent on giving him the choice here. But is he right? Has he rumbled Sylvanas' real motivation and found the crack in her armor? Has he found the missing piece to turn the tables and win Sylvanas over? Or is this Sylvanas 5D chess? Is it a double bluff, and making Anduin think he's getting through to her is all part of the plan to get him on the jailer's side all along? Ah, my brain! Well, all we can do is look at the evidence and clues the cinematic team give us. Clue number 1.
Despite all your grand designs.
As Anduin starts mansplaining what he considers to be her own motivations at Sylvanas, dick move Anduin, there is this clenching of the fist, which is an established Sylvanas tell. Because where have we seen this before? I'm glad you asked. Outside Orgrimmar, when Saurfang challenges Sylvanas to mock Gorar, this is an action Sylvanas appears to make when someone is genuinely getting to her, which may suggest the nerve Anduin is touching here is a real one and not part of a more elaborate plan. Clue 2. This
Don't.
which is maybe my favourite bit of Warcraft cinematic facial animation ever. It's edgy, it's jagged, like she genuinely wants him to stop, and not like Anduin is currently walking into a trap that she expertly set. But then Sylvanas could just be an awesome actor. Clue number 3.
Now I understand why you brought me here. Why you've tried so hard to persuade me. Because if you can get me to let go of hope, you finally can too.
Enough! Submit!
The way she bristles when Anduin brings up hope, just like she did at the burning of Teldrassil. It's a subject, a topic that genuinely pushes her buttons, and Anduin may just have worked out why. And the telling thing is that it's enough to make her abandon her final attempt to win Anduin over and instead strike that full-on Wrath of the Lich King pose with the newly mournbladed Shalamayne, which, by the way, is an incredibly cruel twist from the jailer, to defile Anduin's own father's sword and forge it into a tool that they fully intend to use to compel Anduin to do their bidding is vicious. And the implication is definitely that now talking has failed, Sylvanas is about to use it. And we might expect Anduin to have some kind of visceral emotional reaction to seeing this sword like this. And in other circumstances he might, but right now he is far more concerned with the revelation he is having and the potential that is opening up before him.
You are only making this harder on yourself.
Not harder on me. Right now, you hold all the power. How will you use it?
So he stands firm, turning the tables and making the choice Sylvanas's.
I've not come this far to falter now.
Then why do you hesitate? Make your choice, Sylvanas Windrunner.
And, well, there's a lot to unpack here. There's the icy glow of the mourneblade, giving the rest of this exchange a very Lich King-y vibe. Arthas, of course, was the victim of his own decisions, which you initially couldn't say about Sylvanas at the very beginning of her story, but which you definitely can lately. This being another example of how she is becoming the thing that she hated and fought against. And there's tragedy in that, because just as Arthas used the power of a mourneblade to control Sylvanas against her will, so she now stands ready to do the same to another, an action and memory that might just be enough to flick some kind of switch in her. There's the beautiful tension in the exchange between the two characters, with the "I have not come this far to falter now," and then "Why do you hesitate?" Amazing voice acting, incredible animation, absolute A-star 9-carat top drawer cinematic making. There's the way that falter line,
I've not come this far to falter now.
is Sylvanas echoing the jailer's line from the beginning of the scene, which has a double purpose. It shows us her repeating her boss's words in what feels like a very deliberate, personal attempt to remind herself of where her loyalties lie, but on another level reveals her own apparent desperation that, like Lady Macbeth, she realizes too late that the path she is going down is the wrong one, but that she is now too far down it to turn back. Shakespeare spoiler, it doesn't end well for Lady Macbeth, just saying. That line, by the way, "I have come too far to falter now." I wondered if it had any other significance, like maybe Arthas says it or something back in the day, but I couldn't remember, so I did some research, and as far as I know, Arthas never said it, but there is one other Warcraft character that does have it as a voice line. Tyrallion, the golden one who currently sits on the throne of Stormwind while Anduin is dicking about in the moor. So just the jailer, Sylvanas, and Tyrallion. Interesting. And as the camera takes our eyes along the mourneblade of Shalamayne, a new tool of the jailer, we settle on the face of Sylvanas, who now really does appear to be another such instrument of the jailer's will, and maybe, just maybe, on the verge of accepting that. And now the tables have fully turned, as Anduin says explicitly,
Make your choice, Sylvanas Windrunner.
Unless she's just playing 5D chess and this is all part of the plan, and that could totally be the case for sure, but I think as a viewer, we have to take what has been shown in these three cinematics on their own terms. Sylvanas' eagerness to make Anduin's compliance voluntary when she just doesn't need to, the real emotional weight to her belief in what she thinks the jailer's plan is, and the desperation in her face and voice as she confronts Anduin here. And say that whether or not she does genuinely have a choice to make, Blizzard definitely want us to think that Anduin might be right here, and that she is at something of a crossroads, which is obviously massive in terms of the story. And wouldn't it be incredibly fitting if this really is the beginning of Sylvanas seeing what she's become and who she's helping and eventually backing out of it somehow? Wouldn't it be fitting if the thing that made it happen was Anduin's compassion? The fact that he listened to her, that he made an effort to understand where she was coming from, that just by being good, Anduin got to the bottom of Sylvanas Windrunner and unlocked her in that sense. Well, yeah, that would be very nice and simple, but things rarely are that simple in WoW, which brings us to the big question this cinematic has got the community asking. Is this the start of a redemption for Sylvanas Windrunner? Is this where Sylvanas says, "Oh my goodness, Anduin, you are so right, I've been totally played. All this does come from a deep self-loathing and sense of unfairness born of the horrific and incredibly unfair circumstances involving my life and death and afterlife, which were shit, but now I see the jailer is indeed a wrong un, and I totally need to help you do something about that." Well, probably not. But even if it were, that would absolutely be preferable to me than one of the alternative possibilities, which is, aha, I was playing 5D chess with you all along, but at the same time, I was playing 6D chess with the jailer, whose power I will now take an army command for myself, for good or bad as I see fit. That is the Kerrigan ending I think most of us genuinely don't want to see ever, ever. And if Anduin making Sylvanas confront her demons through the power of love might not be to everyone's taste, it's a whole lot better than that, in my opinion. Plus remember, even if Sylvanas does decide that Anduin is right and that the jailer needs to be stopped, even if she somehow helps that happen, it doesn't necessarily mean redemption. I know a lot of you are convinced that Sylvanas is a very one-dimensional character at this point, but that always surprises me because you only have to look at how much the community can and does debate and disagree with itself on her actions and motivations and the good or bad of those actions to see that actually that is totally not the case. So Sylvanas could realise that the jailer is stringing her along with the whole we will dismantle life and death and rebuild them thing and decide to get rid of him so that she can do it herself. She could just disappear and refuse to help him anymore. She could bury these doubts and press on with the plan, throwing good money after bad like a poker player on tilt until she snaps later on in a way that helps us or really, really doesn't. There's any number of places that a Sylvanas having doubts could end up, and as I've said before, even if there is a redemption on the cards for Sylvanas, the beauty of Shadowlands is that it doesn't have to happen in view of us. If she were to help us defeat the jailer and restore some sort of order to the Shadowlands, then by default, she would be given the chance at redemption that the Shadowlands is supposed to offer, but which was denied her by Arthas and the jailer. She doesn't have to become good in front of us or anything lame like that. This story could end with us leaving the very guilty and, for us, unforgivable Sylvanas in Revendreth, where over the course of maybe thousands of years, she will have the chance to find her own redemption in the way that every soul is supposed to have the right to do. And I think that would be pretty cool if we were to leave Sylvanas not as a redeemed character, but with the chance of redemption, which she is owed. Or, maybe Tyrande will just jump in and kill-steal her, who knows. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our initial analysis of the Three Colours Sylvanas trilogy. I think we'll probably end up coming back to it again in the future when we have some more information, but it certainly has given us plenty to think about, and importantly, helped create some real questions and intrigue about what will happen next in the story in 9.1. But what do you think? What is going on with Sylvanas in these cinematics? Is there genuine doubt growing in her? Or is it all a total fake out? Is there any way that you would be okay with her finding some kind of redemption? Or does she need to seriously rot in the maw for the rest of time? Has Anduin found the key to unlock the last remnant of the Banshee Queen's mortality? Or is he arrogantly walking into a big old trap? And what actually is the jailer's plan? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today for this video, which has turned out much longer than I meant it to. It's not even funny. Why does this keep happening? I'm such a dick. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Demetanov. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel and Anirin too. Until next time, cheerio.